Welcome to Politics HQ. I'm Sulaiman. Now, as the 2023 general elections in Nigeria draw closer, all eyes are on who will emerge Nigeria's next president, with four candidates tipped as the primary flag bearers. The People's Democratic Party and the All Progressives Congress are two of these parties, and they're only two parties to have produced Nigerian presidents since 1999. Like every election, the race to 2023 hasn't come without the issues, as both parties continue to wrestle for control. Bwala Daniel, the candidate of the All Progressives Congress, has come under different forms of public scrutiny, especially in the last month. At the same time, the People's Democratic Party's in-house troubles continue to hang around ahead of one of the most critical elections in Nigeria's history. These problems have lasted some time, and many have refused to go. The 2023 presidential election is of high stakes and promises a lot for the country. Nigerians are in the spirit, and these issues will guide their decisions as they ask important questions. We'll wait for the parties to answer some of these queries on the matters arising in Nigeria's most prominent political establishments. Now, at headquarters, we have important members of the party to take us through the matters in their respective parties and how they prepare for that critical 2023 period. Joining me live from Nigeria's capital, Daniel Bwala, spokesperson, Atiku Abubakar 2023 presidential campaign. Good to see you, Daniel, and thanks for your time as always.
Thank you for having me. Good evening.
Well, quite a lot is happening, or rather happening in your party, specifically while the campaigns are already ongoing, and we've seen your candidate speaking across a spectrum in the country. Well, specifically, let's take you back to that conversation he had with some at the Lagos Business School. Let us in on some of the salient points which are still generating conversations across Nigeria.
Right. Thank you, Sulaiman. We were in Lagos about 2 weeks ago or so when our presidential candidate had an interactive session with the Lagos Business School alumni. And I recall vividly when it was his opportunity to speak, he started by first of all giving them the background of his philosophy of life and the economy before delving into what he calls my covenant with the Nigerian people. And he told the crowd that day, and many of the business executives that were present could attest to the fact, that when they came in 1999, they didn't have prior experience in democratic governance, so to speak. He said one of the things that God gifted him with at the time was the ability to headhunt. And so he started identifying one by one key private sector players and asking them to come so they can form government for those who were willing to be part of the government and those who wanted to remain outside to see how they can create the synergy that is required to get the Nigerian economy going. And because of that openness and handshake with the private sector, they were able to create an enabling environment for economic recovery. Because if you recall, at the time we had just escaped, I have to use that word, military interregnum, and there was so much bad image of Nigeria in the international community. The economy was nosediving. Things were not going right. But he said by opening up the economy and allowing private sector participation in the economy, enable the Nigerian people to once again secure the energy that is required to be a part of the process for economic recovery. So he talked about the telecom industry, how the private sector players and even the entrepreneurial and enthusiastic Nigerian people keyed into it. And so you saw the value change from the contract relationship between the major companies that came into Nigeria, and then you see across the value chain to the franchise and to the retail players. Virtually that ordinary man in the street that you thought or you could think would be a beggar had something to do as far as the economy was concerned, to the point where people could buy the charge card, have what looked like a kiosk, and engage in the economy. And it created millions and millions of jobs around the country. He said that was one of the many other principles that they applied, which got us going. He talked about the educational sector, how they introduced scholarship system in the university. So any student who got CGPA 4.0 got a scholarship of about 300,000. And that created that competition across Nigeria in the various universities. People were giving to themselves to education. And that brought about this model of entrepreneurial Nigeria that we see today. So having given them the background, he then delved into what he called by covenant with the Nigerian people, which of course, economy has a very major role to play. But he also emphasized the fact that the lack of management of our diversity has resulted into so many problems, not just the lack of employment, not just the lack of jobs, but even the insecurity in the country, because you find restiveness in different parts of the country. And that interactive session at the end of the day was very, very robust, and people committed to it. But don't forget, Sulaiman, that a few days ago, I think about 3 days ago, he also had 2 sets of interactive engagement. He had a breakfast still in Lagos with business executives, and later in the evening, he also had it with people from art and industry, where he promised to improve the funding through art and culture.
Well,
and
anyway,
some of these,
Daniel, I was going to come to that, but now that you've been able to merge all of that, well, let's stretch it, because first, your candidate said it was going to stay focused and ensure that it stays on issues rather than personalities, even though we'll still come back to how we started with the headlines, talking about the back and forth between your candidate and the APC candidate. Now, speak to us on some of the concerns of Nigerians. Well, you've reeled out some of those fine things, that you can actually credit to Atiku Abubakar. They still think that he cherry picks what suits him. That, for instance, when it comes to the power sector and some other sectors, he tells you that he was only a vice president and he wasn't the main man in charge. But when it comes to others, he takes the credit. So how do you explain this to Nigerians so that they can better understand if there was some kind of, dichotomy at that point in time when he served as vice president under President Obasanjo?
I think his interventions were factually based, right? For example, in the area of the economy, when he was asked to head the privatization processes in Nigeria, he not only admitted to the fact that he was in charge of the privatization, in some areas where we didn't get it right, he admitted that although the bidding processes were followed, but at the time some of the companies did not have due diligence, right? So after some of them acquired the asset, they were not able to continue. Because those ones he admitted. And I think that most of the criticism that is leveled against him from 1999 to 2007 has to do with this particular area. Yet he did not shy away from that. But with respect to power, it is a fact that can be verified. At the time he was involved in part of the power, I don't know what the name is, but it was a power project where he was part of the team and not the head of the team. And he made it clear at the time that he approached then his principal, President Olusegun Obasanjo, and gave his perspective about creating alternative source of energy in Nigeria. And he was factually about all of the things that he mentioned to Obasanjo. Obasanjo didn't think that those ideas were worth taking. And so Obasanjo discarded it. And then we proceeded in the direction that President Obasanjo wanted at the time. And here we are today, not being able to look at that and then, beat our chest and say we succeeded in that. So that is something you can verify that at the time he was not in charge. Now, but in the area of the privatization to which he was in charge, and even though some of the aspects failed, he admitted those ones. So, and as a vice president, the role of the vice president is in the Constitution. He heads the Economic Council. There are other parts of economic functions and some other functions in the Constitution provided for that are under the office of the vice president. But I want to refresh your memory, Mr. Sulaiman, that you recall after 2003 election, as we were approaching the 2007, when it was alleged that President Obasanjo wanted to have a third term, which Atiku was part of the people that foiled the plan because they felt it was undemocratic. From that time, Obasanjo actually stripped him of even some of the constitutional powers that he had. Most of these things that he kept saying, it wasn't me in charge, it was around that period when Obasanjo, sidelined him.
Now, talking about being sidelined, quickly here, some of the other issues that your candidate is speaking about has to do with security, and he's also said he is for ranching. And Nigerians are asking, perhaps, for him to expatiate more if ranching is going to be the mainstay of, the nomads, and if he, also a cattle owner and rearer, has started having some of those ranches in place.
Yeah, the reason why I think he favored ranching is purely because before independence, various parts of the country created the ranching system. You remember we have Obudu cattle ranch. Almost all parts of the country you had the ranch, and they were very, very successful. There was no case of encroachment. There were no cases of conflict because the cattle were kept in a specific place where you have a system that works for them, even for the education of the ranchers, education of the cattle herders. You create an economic hub, around the ranching industry. Now, so that's what he favored, which has limited or minimal crisis and very effective. Look, in 2018, I visited South Dakota. I had an engagement with the senator representing South Dakota, Senator John Thune. If you see some of the cows in South Dakota, you'll be wondering whether they are elephants. And this is as a result of the ranching system. They are kept in a place, they are properly fed, you have veterinary clinic there, people who, the herders, are able to get education. You create an economic hub around that. Now, anything contrary to ranching is what we have, what they call, there's this other one that this government tried to introduce, which will then bring the issue of territorial aggression, territorial encroachment, duplicity of jurisdictional law. So, for example, in Benue, they passed a law, and that law criminalized certain aspects of livestock farming. If somebody is going to move his cow from Maiduguri and take to Lagos, but the cows will have to pass through Benue, you find out that it will create a problem. You then pass a state maybe like Nasarawa, whose law is sympathetic of your cattle rearing, nomadic, or I don't know what the name is. By the time you get to the other state, you have a problem. So he, as a person, knows that this thing cannot be done by a fiat, cannot be done by executive orders, because it also involves the states of the federation. If you look at the Land Use Act, the states are under the confines of the government. There are federal routes. According to President Muhammadu Buhari, as one of the challenges he mentioned with the conflict we find between the herders and the farmers, was that those cattle routes that existed before now have been taken over by buildings, by construction, and through climate change, you can no longer trace those cattle routes.
Daniel, let me jump in here again, Daniel. Apologies. Nigerians now aren't looking for people just to say what suits them or what they really want to hear. Nigerians are also looking for practical solutions. And that is why some are asking if the former vice president has actually started ranching, knowing full well that he also is a big-time cattle rearer. Does he have a ranch? And if he does, where can we find his ranch?
I think he said that. He said he has over 1,000 cows, and they all move within the territory of Adamawa and not beyond Adamawa, because the laws of Adamawa permitted that livestock farming within that jurisdiction. But that is him. He is not the governor of Adamawa. He is not the president of Nigeria. When he becomes, he's encouraging ranching. Now, do you know that the
in other words, he's not started practicing what he hopes to sell to the Nigerian people.
So let me put it this way: if you have, because I haven't been to the livestock farm, but I want to put it this, I'll create this scenario. If ranching at the moment will create a lot of economic cost to him, since the state is not involved, but that the state of Adamawa encourages a cattle rearing or livestock feeding system that allows the cow to revolve around Adamawa, which from time immemorial till today has not created any crisis. Why would you not, for example, take advantage of an existing law that has not created a problem, but is favorable to you in the sense that you have less cost and more benefit? But because this has become a problem in Nigeria, he is proposing what has existed before in Nigeria. Remember, he's not introducing something new. We used to have cattle ranch all over the country, and they were successful. And I think this idea that he is talking about, a lot of stakeholders that commence this conversation around finding a solution between the farmers and the herders favored the ranching. Those who worked against ranching are probably states that are not prepared to invest in agricultural farming that involves cattle ranching, because cattle ranching is not just creating a space and putting them there and locking them. It's creating an economic hub. It means the state will have to bring massive investment in the ranching system. You have to create infrastructure for the ranching. It's like a different world. You have to have school around the area. You have to have hospital. Then you have to have veterinary hospital. And then you may need to have a human clinic. So it is like creating an economic hub. Today we realize that ranching is one way by which you can have explosion in the area of our livestock farming. I think it's a day everybody is going to embrace. So again, like I said, and like he said, ranching is what he's proposing, because he's not going to be the president of Adamawa. He's going to be the president of a nation that in some states, this ranching is not allowed.
Well, I mean, these are... so as we move on, in other words, it looks as if there's no... he doesn't own a ranch at the moment. The cattle are roaming, you know...
No, I cannot...
within Adamawa space.
Yet, I cannot confirm or deny that existence, because the only thing I heard him say was that his cattle, his cattle or cows or whatever, have not been moving outside of Adamawa State. So if they are kept in a ranching system somewhere in Adamawa, or that they roam around Adamawa, is what is not clear to me. But they have not moved outside of Adamawa State. That was the point he made.
Okay, Daniel, there's another big story. Okay, so far, your candidate has been doing well talking about the issues, and that was why I said, let's start by talking about, recapping some of those issues, which you highlighted earlier on. But it would seem as if, well, we're digging deep into the kind of dirty or murky politics in Nigeria. Just recently, he hit back at his longtime friend, now candidate of the All Progressives Congress, saying that he's unfit, as his gaffes are content for skit makers. Did he actually say that?
Oh, he never said that. The person who issued the statement is one of his media aides by name Frank Shaibu. And Mr. Frank Shaibu issued those statements in reaction to equally a very bad comment by the presidential candidate of APC. And let me take this time to tell you this. You know, I was in APC. When I left, I joined PDP. I made clear to the entire media, the Nigerian press, that I was going to ensure that this politics is going to be issue-based, and that I was never going to be involved in name-calling and all of that. You still cannot find that with me. But I want to give you the reason why sometimes when we react, and when I talk about when we react from our own end, people tend to cry foul, but they don't want to look at this fact that it is merely a reaction to what has been said. In the laws of conflict, when you want to resolve conflict, you have to look at causation. What is the root cause? Who is the person shooting the gun? Because even under International Geneva Convention, when you shoot at someone and the person returns the fire, the returning of the fire is considered fair in the game. And so when you want to trace the problem or you want to find a solution, you always have to look at how APC at all material times will be the one to throw the shot, and when you reply, it creates an issue. You know, 2 days ago, I was in Lagos, and the world was surprised when we met and had a chit-chat with the son of the presidential candidate of APC, right in front of the hotel where all of us were staying. The way we were talking, people got to know that politics is not bitterness, politics is not war. And we had a frank talk with him on many issues. And I made it clear to him that all you need to look is to go back to history and see how all these things began. There would always be the first set of people that would throw, the dirt. And then when you try to talk back or join the issues or react to the issues, then it becomes something. For example, these are drug case associated with Asiwaju Bola Tinubu. It was a back and forth that the spokesman for APC was having with one journalist called Hundeyin, who is a known supporter of Peter Obi. But do you know that the spokesman went on television and said that this problem is emanating from PDP, and that PDP went to America to go and fetch this evidence against them? We were not involved, and then he brought us into it. So it behoves of us to also go back to the media and clarify to the people the issue. And in the process of clarifying, you have to call a spade a spade. So this is what we have been trying to communicate to the Nigerian people to understand, that when you look at the antics of APC, what they will do is like a troublesome boy. He will throw tantrum, and then the minute you try to reply back, he will cry foul. And that is exactly what they are doing, which to me is very, very bad. But for me, whether you insult me or you don't, I do not believe that the politics should revolve around insult. It should be about issues. And there are enough issues to talk about, because APC has failed Nigeria. On the standard they set for themselves, they have failed. On the standard Nigerian people expect of them, they have failed. On the one we are challenging on them, they have failed. Even when they produce the manifesto, they call it renewed hope, which is a clear expression of the fact that the hope has died, if there was any hope, and now has been classified as either
let's close on this, if you don't mind, Daniel. Let's quickly close on this. What's the difference between APC and the PDP? Because if you look at it critically, it will seem as if almost every person has actually crossed the carpet, apart from the APC candidate Bwala Tinubu. Your candidate has done back and forth within the APC and the PDP. You have done the same. Quite a number of persons within the PDP have also done that. So Nigerians would want to know the difference between the APC and the PDP that have both been tested by the people.
Well, for the information and clarification, Asiwaju has changed party 4 times. It was AD, then AC, then ACN, and now APC. So he has not been with one party.
If you want us to go back, sorry, quickly here. I think for clarity's sake, so that we don't misinform the people, that's not the same as crossing the carpet. Metamorphosis or changing of political parties, quite frankly, isn't the same as actually crossing the carpet back and forth, is it?
So let me put it this way: if you change club or you change your jersey in the same club, one fact is clear: you change the jersey. That's the point I'm trying to say. If AD was perfect and there wasn't need to change to AC, then there was no need to change to AC. But they did the change. And if there was no need to go beyond AC, why did they go to ACN? And if there was no need to move from ACN to join forces with part of PDP and part of ANPP and part of ABDA to have the APC, if there was no need, then stay where you are. But you have interacted with the people. In other words, you brought all the minds together to form a new ideology. All I'm trying to say is that there is not a single politician that is in the mainstream in Nigeria today that has not had, at one time or the other, the need to change the party. Anyway, in any case, changing the party is not a big deal, even if you change 1 million times, because you have to look at the circumstances behind the change of the party. So if somebody is changing for changing's sake, then you could say he doesn't have a principle. But if, for example, you believe you have a vision for Nigeria, you want to actualize it in a political party, they refuse to give you a platform, will you go and bury yourself? Won't you look for another platform?
So let's quickly see if we can do this in a minute.
And the new phenomenon.
What differentiates your party from the APC as they go into this election?
Okay. So what differentiates us and the APC is that we believe in an economy that rallies the energy of the Nigerian people to find a common front for economic prosperity. We believe that education should be given priority so we can transform our country from an economy that depends on natural resources to a knowledge-based economy. We believe that the Nigerian people are entrepreneurial. All you need to do is to give them enabling environment. We also believe that unless we manage our diversity so that anybody from any part of Nigeria can believe he can achieve the Nigerian dream, it is not possible to have a free society and good society. All these things I have mentioned, APC does not believe in it because their ideology is one that is different from free market economy to a governed economy where they choose who they make rich and who they make poor. This is fundamentally the difference between the two parties. But much more deeper, I think, is about the personalities running for the president. Because if you look at political party, you may not have enough to chew. But looking at the personality, between Asiwaju, Peter Obi, Kwankwaso, and Atiku, who is better suited to the president? Based on experience, Atiku. Based on strong will, Atiku. Based on national spread, Atiku. Based on capacity to galvanize Nigerian people, Atiku. And based on commanding international respect, Atiku. So this is fundamentally the difference between the presidential candidate. I choose to look at that rather than looking at the political party.
Daniel Bwala, many thanks for speaking with us on Politics HQ.
Thank you.